Good morning, everybody. Lovely to have you all with us in this special one-off senior leadership focused episode of the Social Housing Roundtable being run by Alertical today, obviously being run by me. So nice to have you all with us. To those who are new or haven't joined the Roundtable before, my name's Matt Baird. I am the founder of the Social Housing Roundtable. I've been running it for about 4 years now. We've done 184 episodes and growing all the time. So lovely to have you all with us today. Day-to-day I work in recruitment. But the reason the roundtable exists and the way that it's run and the way that it's grown is through my recruitment business, but also through sponsorship. And Alertical are one of our annual sponsors and have asked us to put this on today, along with Evie, to just kind of a bit of a focus session, really. As I say, aimed at senior leadership, aimed at people who are perhaps more decision makers and have got a little bit more influence day to day in terms of helping to make change within social housing businesses. To discuss that delivering transformational change bit, discussing how we can better engage with customers, how we can engage with stakeholders, but also just to talk very openly and candidly around where those challenges are and why, when sometimes outside the sector or sometimes the noise around the sector, this should be easy. Why is it so difficult? Where are the problems? And actually engaging in that way to hopefully have quite an informed discussion over the next hour or so. So Evie, I'm going to pass over to you because I know you're going to kick off today's conversation. Those who don't know Evie, we've known each other for a few years now, but have only actually worked together for the first time this week on a different social housing roundtable, and now we're back working again today, which is wonderful, kind of 2 roundtables in 3 days. She's the Director of Customers and Communities, and make sure I've got that right, at Berwickshire Housing Association, and is also running for the CIH Vice Presidency, which actually closes tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow night,
Tomorrow night, the end of the presidency. So the very best of luck with it. But I'm going to pass over to you to kick off today's session. Please feel free to make intros in the chat if you wish and just kind of share us where you're from. And more importantly, obviously then engage in the conversation, and we'll be inviting people in once Evie has finished kind of introducing what we're going to be talking about today. So without further ado, Evie, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you so much. I know you're saying good luck, but I've got a share on a call to do first. So if we manage that successfully, that will be a great start. Right.
You did have a driver?
Hopefully.
That's working brilliantly. You're up and running.
So, cool. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I think I've taken the title of this quite loosely, and hopefully you'll see why as we work through. I've got a few slides, and then I think, I'm as keen as anybody to hear what everybody else has got to say, because I think the critical part of this is no one organisation has all the answers or all the techniques or all the right measures, I guess, at the end of it. So now we've got to share. There we go. Okay. So about BHA, I guess the place to start is to talk about Berwickshire Housing Association. Our vision is to realise the power of home. That's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We are a small housing provider, medium in the Scottish context in the southeast of Scotland. We're on the very, very edge of the Scottish borders. We are small and perfectly formed in our view, with a small number of properties over the border in England, a total of 8. So in some respects, we have a wee bit of a reach. We could be a national provider. We were a stock transfer organisation from the late Berwickshire District Council in 1995, and we are compliant with the Scottish Housing Regulator. As I say, we're small, rental income of around £11 million a year. We directly employ 53 people and many more through our various contracts and other arrangements. With our size and scale comes some limitations. Our new build programme is on pause between last year and next year. And then moving forward, our capacity in our business plan is to deliver around 180 homes. So you're talking probably between 15 and 25 from the year after next onwards. We deliver mostly general needs housing. We have 83 independent living homes for people over the age of 55. And we've got around 150 homes becoming empty every year. We are a unique housing association. Our commercial subsidiary owns and operates a wind farm on the east coast of Scotland. We've had that since 2017. That's a partnership with Community Energy Scotland. And we run an in-house Befriend service, which has been National Lottery funded for the last 10 years, that supports more than 100 local people over the age of 65 as well. So I wanted to just touch on Alertical as well. Electrical as a technology partner, you may already use electrical yourself, but I think for us, they offer so much more. Electrical solutions are really those that help people feel safe and connected, better informed, and their CEO, James Batchelor, invented the I'm OK button after being inspired by his grandmother Evelyn and her desire to stay at home as long as possible. Award-winning organisation, picking up the Queen's Award for Prize for their innovative solutions back in 2022. And if you don't work with electrical already, I would strongly suggest you have a wee look at some of the solutions, products and services that they offer. There is much listed on their website, but I think one of the key features of electrical is they do so much more. So I thought it was useful just to set a bit of context, certainly for Scotland. And for us, you know, like everybody else, we've got legal, regulatory and best practice as the kind of obligations we have. And in Scotland, the big one for us really is the Scottish Social Housing Charter, which sets out the standards that a registered social landlord needs to achieve. And just in terms of the aspects of customer and kind of stakeholder engagement, those are the outcomes around equalities, estate management, antisocial behaviour, neighbour uses and the like, housing options and tenancy sustainment, very much the kind of housing management piece and the things that impact communities day to day. In terms of the Scottish Borders context, we are on the southeast of Scotland. It's a fairly rural area. Berwickshire Housing is one of the 4 main housing associations in the region. The 4 kind of bigger housing associations together form the Borders Housing Network. The rural nature of where we work brings its own challenges, very much an ageing population, and on a wider Borders setup, and also within Berwickshire there is issues with contractor availability in the supply chain, but also being able to kind of meet the need for new housing. There is a strong partnership dynamic, which I'll touch on later in the slides, but there is very much a culture here in this part of the world of what they call in Scots I-bean, no real desire for any kind of change unless you know it suits the characters involved, very similar to what everybody else will be dealing with. But I think just in terms of new people coming into the area and suggesting different things, it can take an awful lot longer to get people kind of bought into what we're trying to do. So Berwickshire is one of the smaller areas of the Borders, particularly affected by a real low wage economy and seasonal employment. That's both in terms of agriculture and the fishing industry. A lot of our homes are in and around fishing villages and towns, and that in 2025 comes with its own challenges, just in terms of people being able to make any kind of livable income off that, and coming on and off universal credit, for example, over the course of any kind of year, alongside having to maintain equipment and boats and all the rest of it to try and maintain a level of lifestyle for their family. Relatively low crime and antisocial behaviour rates where we are, but when things do happen, the impact on communities is so much greater, and the need for that partnership approach to help people kind of recover, move on and come back together is hugely important. It's also a difficult area for young people to access any kind of opportunity. I mean, we're in some respects really well positioned an hour away from Edinburgh and Newcastle, but in terms of the transport links, etc., really, really difficult for young people to look to do anything else bar leave, unfortunately. So I thought it was worth, again, just touching on some of the customer insight. And again, this may not be different to a lot of others, but this is the kind of part of the world that we cover. So Berwickshire is kind of in the middle here. Edinburgh is just on the kind of cut-off part at the top left-hand corner. And we cover the very, very east of the region thereafter. So about a third of our customers live in a fishing town called Eyemouth. Around a quarter of them living in a small kind of rural town in Duns. And everyone else kind of round about that. So again, very, very rural. And in terms of demographics, we've got those numbers don't add up. That's handy. I wonder everybody else in between. But we're seeing an awful lot more people applying for homes with us who are under 55 compared to a customer base at the moment who are predominantly over the age of 55. That ageing population is becoming more and more complex. But when we look at things like our demand, we're a choice-based lettings solution. We have around 2,200 people looking for rehousing with us at any given time. 55% of those with any kind of priority, and a lot of people who have, no housing need. Longest serving kind of registration at the moment, more than 6,500 days. But for us, the big kind of trend at the moment is the need for one beds. 54% of all of those registrations looking for one bed accommodation. And again, 71% of those under the age of 55, which is a really stark contrast to what we're dealing with in terms of the current tenant population. Higher number of people with a disability than ever before, more than half. And in terms of our stock, the limited nature of where we are, what we have, is really, really challenging. With that one bed demand, we're seeing really low numbers of turnover, and where we have families who are growing and needing to move into bigger accommodation, we just don't have the stock at all to help. So Scottish Borders Council was one of the early councils in Scotland to also declare the housing emergency on a regional level. So, we feel that every day, and particularly in some of the larger accommodation. I mean, we have one 5-bedroom property that's highly adapted, highly unlikely to become empty anytime in the next kind of 10 years, and a lot of people looking for some support for that. I think for us, though, the key part of delivering any change is just how we support our teams to engage with our customers and our communities out on their patch. And one of our key business plan priorities is psychological safety. So that's very much been a core focus for us for the last 2 years, around fostering a culture of trust and innovation. Our structure is very much centred around our customer. Our business support team, our kind of corporate service central, if you like, is a wraparound with all of our other services kind of in between those and our customer. My responsibility in being that covers neighbourhood management, our housing team, independent living for our over 55s, our income team, and our tenancy sustainability and support colleagues, alongside a couple of external contracts that help us to deliver some of those. And those teams are supported by strong foundations. So, as I said, the vision of the organisation is to realise the power of home. That's supported by our 4 values, which are brilliant basics, learn and grow, embracing change, and inspire together. And I was just saying to Matt before we started, some of this will be very much, we know that. Why are you telling us that? This isn't exactly delivering anything new or different or innovative particularly, but I think, for us, everything is rooted in brilliant basics. That's doing what we say we'll do always. And if we can't be accountable to that, then we press pause on anything sort of bigger or greater than that. We need to get the basics right. We need people to know that they can trust us when they ask us for something, and retain the credibility of being able to fulfil what's been asked of us. And if we can't do that, fulfil what we often call the bread and butter of what we do, then anything else, the shine, the gloss, anything else round about it is not what we're here to do. So do that as well. We've got a host of key partnerships, and like every other organisation, those will be national, kind of region-wide, and more specific on a locality level. But our partnerships with the Institute of Housing, the SPHA, the NatFed equivalent in Scotland, are absolutely critical to the work that we do. And for us, that's a wide opportunity for us to contribute at a strategic level nationally on the things that are really important to us. Our Chief Exec, Michelle, is one of the leading champions on domestic abuse improvement and awareness raising in Scotland. So thanks to her efforts and experience, we're able to contribute to domestic abuse legislation, policy development on a national level, which is hugely important to us in the service that we provide to our customers. That also includes Housemarque. Things like regular engagement with the MPs and the MSPs who represent our area. So, we'll do that quarterly, we'll set an agenda, we'll make sure that we've given sight to the elected members about what we're aiming to talk to, get them to bring some suggestions back of anything else that's useful. And then when it does come to influencing potential legislations in draft, bill development, that kind of thing, any amendments we would propose or suggest, or any feedback we can give to them directly, that connection is really strong, constant, and actually when they're looking for some support to take forward things themselves, they've got a trusted partner in which to do so. We also meet regularly with the housing regulator in Scotland, so we're assurance-based, risk-based in Scotland. There isn't the same level of inspection that colleagues in England will have. This is very much about organisations being assured with what's happening, boards being assured with what's happening within the organisations they're responsible for. So for us, it's really important to have that open, regular communication. We tend to do that with a bit of a briefing note, talk to exactly what's going on, and then have a kind of an hour every quarter with our regulation manager just to talk through what's going on. And generally that's a really positive engagement that keeps our kind of key contacts up to date with where we are and what we're doing. On a regional kind of format, the same kind of council-led, local authority-led partnerships that everybody will be part of. But for us, this is also about, again, key relationships, about how we can maximise what we need for our customers. So even just this morning, some of the community planning partnership, community justice partnerships that we're part of, we're seeing, certainly in Scotland, a lot of community assets at risk that are being considered for community asset transfer, to have local people being responsible for it, which comes with its own challenges, but actually there is so much more that us as a community anchor organisation and key stakeholder can assist to make sure that local people don't lose access to some of these things, or we look for an opportunity to deliver some of these in a different way. And on a Berwickshire level, that role as a community anchor organisation is really important to us. So things like, building that community alliance, working with local councillors, we've got a voluntary service, there's a huge abundance actually of people in the community leading some of the activity within towns and villages across this part of the world through things like Hartford Duns, which is very much a kind of community improvement group, and Abundant Borders, which is a food waste prevention organisation, but also delivers a lot of community gardens and allotment spaces and gets people growing vegetables and that kind of thing as well. So I think we're nearly at the end, you may be glad to hear, but what does that all mean when it comes to delivering change? I think for us, this is really about 2 ears, one mouth, active listening at its absolute basic level, that, let's hear it. If we need to have some news about how we're doing, how we're being received, then let's hear it, because the only thing we can do is be better. All of that really founded in BHA being embedded as a community anchor organisation, a bit just even in terms of the sector as it is just now, and the kind of stories that have been in the news for the last 12 months and more. A lot of this is about restoring trust, and for us that's really strongly connected to the value of brilliant basics and doing what we say we'll do and being able to kind of close the loop on things. And like people like Alert Call and others, working with really high quality partners who care as much as we do about delivering positive outcomes for the places and the people that we serve. Learning from others. So I think really for me, I'm most keen to hear what others have got to say and start a bit of a conversation today, because I think this sort of forum and environment we often don't do enough. And finally, that's about ensuring our people have the resources to create solutions, and that's not always just financial. I mean, I spent some time with a colleague the other day who was quite frankly incredible. Some of the things that housing officers can do with an iPhone in their hand, just brilliant. So making sure that our people have got the permission and the connections to be able to do some of these brilliant things that they do all day, every day, in the places that they're responsible for. But that's all I've got, Matt. I would be absolutely delighted to put that out to some questions.
Thank you very much. No, look, absolutely wonderful. Thank you. And I think I can see a lot of smiling faces. I think a lot of people resonating with what you're sharing. I think what's also clear is that, whilst it isn't, whilst we look at things sometimes to go, this should be simple or should be straightforward or whatever it might be, actually a lot of this is difficult. I mean, you have various terminologies that come about, but trying to engage with people in new ways and new and innovative ways isn't easy when there's so many piling pressures from different areas. I don't know if anyone has questions or would like to dive in. We'd love to hear from you. Obviously, this is very much a roundtable event. We want to be hearing from those who are with us. The easiest way for me is if you use the react symbol and raise hand, but also just turn on your camera and wave at me. I'd love to bring you in. And there's Emma. Wonderful. Fantastic. I'm not having to make stuff up. Emma, I'll bring you in. Please do make introductions if you do come in, because we've only got a small group with us today. So we'd love to know who you are and where you're from. Alert Call return as one of the keynote sponsors for the Social Housing Roundtable in 2025 into 2026, and we're delighted to have them back. Alert Call help as many people as possible feel safe, connected and informed by combining ingenious technology and award-winning human contact. As you can see from this touchscreen I've got with me, Alert Call's digital engagement solution helps social landlords proactively know their customers and properties by putting a portable touchscreen in every home, offering a daily property check through the optional OK Each Day service, plus repairs reporting, tenant surveys and much more. They also provide Beyond Warden Call, an easier, simpler and lower cost wireless warden call solution with video door entry, dispersed telecare and smoke alarms. Alert Call work with over 60 housing providers across the UK to enhance two-way engagement between customers and their landlords. In 2022, Alert Call won the Queen's Award for Enterprise and Innovation, and in 2023, Alert Call won Housing Supplier of the Year. We're delighted to have them back with us throughout the course of this year, and please do go check them out on social media and LinkedIn to find out more. Thank you very much, Alert Call, for sponsoring us again.
Morning, everyone. Sorry I was a bit late in joining. I got held up. Emma Dalzell, Head of Marketing at Alert Call. Hi, Evie. So I'm curious, Evie, around tenant satisfaction measures and how you have gathered those, and also how you have implemented some of the feedback from that, given you know what you've said there about doing the basics actually, and that's the most important thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, they are slightly different in Scotland, and we've reported on satisfaction for probably the last 10 years as part of the annual return on the Charter to the Scottish Housing Regulator, but very much the same flavour as what you're all doing now. For us, the regulatory requirement here is that those are done once every 3 years, and depending on the size of the organisation, up to about 2,000 units, you'd be expected to do a whole kind of census approach and ask every customer or tenant to have the opportunity to respond. For organisations smaller than that, you can take it on a kind of phased approach if you decide to do so. But for us, we take a monthly pulse. We see where people are of a month. We're able to give then our board and our leadership team exactly where we are in a month. We use the regulatory questions, and we've kept it pretty straightforward, to be honest, because I think there's a reality about what you can then respond to and respond to well. And again, you'll be sick of me saying it by the end of this hour. This is very much rooted in brilliant basics. So if we can't, there's no point us asking 10 questions if we can't give 10 solutions. We need to get the thing that is most important to people right. So we ask a very kind of broad, is there anything else that you want to tell us type of question. Another partner we use is CX Feedback. So we use CX Feedback to do the majority of that. I'm not sure on the specifics around the TSM measures in England, if that's something that needs to be done externally, but it is something we've done externally in the past. Now it's something that we brought in-house thanks to the digital technology, which in Scotland certainly gives you the requirement actually to be able to do the census approach, so you get a good picture of how everybody is feeling at any given time, but also then break that down into patches. So, you know, while we are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, we've also inherited you know, old local authority stock like many others. So there are areas where we've got sort of post-war, four in a block, flatted accommodation that desperately need investment. So being able to identify repairs, for example, that come from people who are perhaps not engaging with us in the way that we would like them to, not reporting repairs, for example, I've lost a bit of faith, I've lost a bit of trust, that kind of thing. When we're getting some of that sort of feedback, that gives us another opportunity to be able to go back and, as I say, close that loop, root this in brilliant basics about how we then make that better. Now, that might not always be, right, we'll come and sort that, we'll come and replace your bathroom, we'll come and replace your kitchen today. You know, I've talked to the size and scale and the limitations on that for an organisation of our size, but it may be, you know, urgent repairs, it may be we have a kind of ad hoc process that we're able to take things that aren't in our kind of current investment plan forward. But it gives us an opportunity to see how people are feeling about the various aspects of the service we provide. Secondly, what does it look like for a community? And what does it then look like for the locality teams who are working there, so we can be ahead of some of this before it meets you at the front door up the garden path? And then thirdly, actually, what does it look like in terms of investment priorities for the next 4, 5, 10, 30 years, and the longest state of it?
I think, oh, Emma, you're still on mute.
You muted me again, sorry. I was just going to ask a follow-up to that, if that's all right. So because you do it monthly, do you feel, or do customers feel that they are getting more engagement from you rather than, I mean, every 3 years seems a really long time, doesn't it? But monthly is you know, is a very regular kind of basis for them. Do they feel that you are engaging and more, and that as a result of that, their voice is being heard more?
So one of the measures in Scotland is satisfaction with opportunities to participate as well. So, like, this is one way of doing that. I think for us, this is about, you know, using some of the language of the questions that we need to ask on behalf of the regulator and the way that we're positioning some of the engagement opportunities we offer. So again, some of this will be a bit different, but nonetheless, you know, good practice and ways of getting people involved in things. But, you know, in terms of the annual performance, you know, there's an opportunity for people to become engaged in that, and we'll consult and ask people their views and thoughts on the kinds of things that we talk about in our annual report, that kind of thing. So that actually, if you're not really bothered how long it takes us to, or how satisfied people are with one particular aspect of service, but you want to know how quickly we're doing repairs, you want to know how quickly we're responding to queries about damp and mould, you want to know how quickly we're turning houses around, that kind of thing, then those would be the focus, and that would be very much led by tenants, which is really helpful. I think the overall satisfaction capture is one aspect of it as well. So things like CX feedback, for example, give us opportunity to do routine pulse surveys about all sorts of things. So, you know, we'll do that at the completion of a repair, so people get a repair satisfaction survey. You know, if we'll do a sample of calls, you know, how did it go? We'll have very much kind of service focused stuff. So I talked about our tenancy sustainment team, so we'll ask people a sample, again, you know, trying to prevent kind of survey fatigue, particularly when you're dealing with really small numbers. It's likely that people will meet a few of those opportunities for a question to be asked. But, you know, how did you find it? Is there anything else that we can do? And some of that, you know, being via text or email in a digital format, some of that being a telephone call from a colleague, and some being, you know, a colleague asking you when you're at home. And some of this also as well is about automating some of the routine opportunities to participate, things like settling in visits, you know, 6 to 8 weeks after someone moves in, to try and gather some information for people who are quite happy living their life without us being in their top pocket. So, you know, there are a lot of times in housing where we spend so much time thinking about how we can become a really big part of a customer or a tenant's life. And actually, it's okay if you want to pay your rent, live in your house, and, you know, see us when you're coming to hand your keys back. That's absolutely okay. Maintain the terms of the tenancy. That's absolutely grand. But for the people who do want to be involved, let's make sure there's lots of opportunities to do so in a way that suits them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's that balance that's so hard, isn't it? Of being able to go, we want to be in touch, we want to make sure we're getting it right, but actually just leave me alone. I'm fine. Everything's okay. Yeah. But almost getting that reassurance, which is what I think is so often requested from the regulator and the ombudsman. Like, you almost need that constant reassurance that, but they don't want to give it because they're happy. So, and that line between the two is really difficult. And I know, obviously, you've used tech. Obviously, that's one of the reasons that kind of was brought today to try and overcome some of those solutions. But equally, it's such a challenge, I think, for housing more generally. You know, when we're talking about outstanding customer engagement, outstanding stakeholder engagement, whilst we're still in this situation at the moment of going, well, you know, I know obviously the regulation's slightly different in Scotland, but it's still know your customer, know who's behind the door, know everything that's going on, make sure that you kind of know, you know, what they're having for breakfast. And on the zip flips, like, people just want to be left alone. They just need to know the house is safe, and if there is an issue, that they can report it without worry about losing their tenancy or all the other things that you hear about, and that the repair or whatever it is going to get fixed.
Definitely. And I think that, you know, there are easy ways for us to use the information we already have without being, you know, overly intrusive. Gas service has been done on time. You know, have we had any repairs in the last year? Have we had any contact in the last year? Right, no, we haven't. So there's a group of people, you know, for us, very small, that we can then identify priority people. So, you know, anybody over 65, anybody living alone, that kind of thing, those are the people that we would, you know, look to call upon first. And for us, we carry a customer connect visit, which we do kind of every 2 years to every household, but that very much gives us a sense in person of, I don't need to see you for another 2 years, or I would like to see somebody every 6 weeks, every 6 months, and allows us to refer and divert people to, you know, an appropriate agency as required.
Nigel, thank you. Do come in.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Nigel from Alertical as well. With the pressures that are on social housing organisations with regards to like tenant satisfaction measures and all the other things that you guys have to deliver, how do you actually prioritise what it is you're going to do for the future, as in like developing products, developing solutions to meet satisfaction measures, to increase communication, things like that? The reason why I ask is, obviously, we go to a lot of organisations and have chats with a lot of them. The vast majority are very keen to increase communication, but they're also sort of hindered by lots of other projects going on at the same time. So how do you actually then therefore prioritise what is, you know, who comes first in terms of, is it the organisation, is it the customers? And obviously, I know that you've only got a limited amount of resources to use. So how does one go about prioritising what to do?
I think it'll be different in every organisation, but I think the team approach for us certainly is about, you know, the responsible director identifying what is the most important thing at any given time. So for us at the moment, it's things like prevention of homelessness, for example. So looking to explore any opportunities to support people to stay in their homes. So I think for us at the moment, there is a lot of kind of rogue sort of financial advice in the midst. So making sure that we've got really appropriate and qualified advice to direct people to for things like you know, debt advice and trust deeds are a really big issue here at the moment, which are leaving people at risk and, you know, not able to access credit if they're able to do responsibly for many, many years. And when we look at the wider picture about how some of these services are delivered here at the moment, there is nobody. Citizens Advice is on its knees. The pressure on other services is squeezed harder than it ever has been before. So for us, actually, there's a real balance again between the priorities, but actually what we need to do as a housing association and a landlord, and what we can do to make lives better for the people who live in our communities. And actually, if something like looking to bring partners together for something like money advice, for example, is something that would be worth doing. I think the nature of a lot of what we're doing is very responsive by its nature, and I think certainly I'm an operational director, so a lot of this is about taking what I'm hearing from colleagues and trying to turn that into something to try and be at least a step ahead of what's coming next. I think for us, the benefit of having the Borders Housing Network, that sort of collaboration of RSLs working in a similar-ish area, allows us to tap into the knowledge of what other people are seeing. I think my maybe second to last point on my second last slide was something around embracing the learning and the experiences and working together ultimately to make sure we get what we need for everybody. And certainly for what we've seen here, some of those partner arrangements, so we've just received some funding for a joint bid around domestic abuse support in the Borders, because that's been an issue for us, getting access to the specialism. To be able to, make sure we're preventing homelessness there. There's a lot of new legislation coming in Scotland that will really focus on, but also things like fuel. And actually, for a lot of the time, I think it's things outside the landlord remit that we're having to spend more time on, which will not be a surprise to anybody. And make sure we either prioritise, we give people the tools and the resources to say, no, this is where you need to go instead, or work to find a way to deliver it either ourselves or with others, and that may be statutory partners in the mix for that as well.
Thank you very much. Tom, I didn't have to come back in then. No, that's lovely. I think there's a really interesting piece you've mentioned there around that kind of partnership working, and I appreciate at the moment this is becoming more of a Q&A for you, Evie. I'm hoping that if anyone does have other ideas they'd like to share, or anything that any of the other leaders in the room are doing to, I don't know, anything innovative or anything different they're trying regarding customer engagement, stakeholder engagement, or the challenges they're facing, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to raise hands, or I'd say put it in the chat box is fine. But when you're talking about that kind of partnership working, Peter, and those being squeezed more and more, I do think from the more day-to-day roundtables that we run every Tuesday, I think tenants are becoming more and more aware of that. I think they're almost giving a little bit more kind of understanding towards housing associations, going, look, we know we're asking you to be masters of everything, and you can't be. But on the other side, when things are being squeezed so much and being dropped so much, it's almost becoming the responsibility of landlords to suddenly have to pick that up because there's no one else to do it. With such a, particularly when you're very rural, and sometimes very difficult to reach, and those communities can be sometimes self-managed, but also very so much easier to become isolated in those kind of rural communities. Do you think that those communities are having to kind of self-regulate themselves more and more because of the squeeze on all the things, or is it, or are you as a housing association able to pick up that slack because it's? I'm just thinking of the difference between rural and I guess urban. Is it easier, do you think, for a rural community, or do you think it'd be easier if you're in a more urban situation? Case Management Solution Group, or CMSG, are the home of React, the UK's #1 case management system for ASB and community safety. We are delighted to have them as one of our key sponsors for Social Housing Roundtable 2025 into 2026. And with the ASB app now fully integrated to the platform, it allows residents to record, monitor and report issues directly to their case office in live time. What's not to love? CMSG are bringing simplicity back to case management, and I cannot recommend them enough and thank them for all of their support through this period and through the rest of the year. Thank you, CMSG, and do please go check them out on social media and on LinkedIn. Thank you.
I think there's a good bit of both. In the very rural communities we've got, I think there's very much, you go knock your neighbour's door and, get them in for their tea, or, make sure somebody has got that connection, or you check in, you haven't seen them for a few days, that sort of thing. I think definitely still happens in a lot of the rural communities. Certainly in an urban context, I think people's tolerance a lot of the time to each other is challenged more than ever. I mean, I think that can go from they brought my bin in to, something really serious actually at the other end of it. And helpfulness that, and I think the pandemic's probably got a lot to answer for as well about people's reaction to people sort of stepping in. But the partnership aspect, I think the question that we're asking ourselves, particularly again, rooted in brilliant basics, is this something for us to do, or is there a role to try and connect the right people? So for things like, I read often about colleagues feeling like they're having to pick up things that social workers should be doing, for example. So for us, very much about actually, no, let's get social work to the table. We have a weekly stand-up with the social work team who are responsible for our area. We exchange, this is who we are concerned about, notwithstanding the duty process and raising concerns and referrals through that way. But, you know, how do we make the most out of some of these services that exist, who have more of a responsibility to make sure people are safe than even we do with our duty to report concerns?
And Jamie, I know you've got your hand up. I'm assuming you got follow on from some of this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as all this is going on, there's a lot of really good stuff here. I know, Evie, you said we'll all probably be sick of you saying brilliant basics. No, not in the slightest. We all have our own terminology for this stuff. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And it's if you can't do your core right, why bother?
Yeah.
And it's being able to be tenacious with that. I think the thought that's kind of crystallizing in my mind is the change in paradigm between single providers in areas who were kind of able to get on with their stuff. And now we're all in this mad sea of a lot of different changes, a lot of internal and external change all at the same time. There's external pressure that usually, I mean, if you think in any instance, what's your natural reaction of an organization to an external stimulus? It's to run and hide, or you come out fighting, and not always in a good way. And I think sometimes the combination of everything from COVID right the way through to what's going to happen with Awaab's law and all the rest of it, we're still trying to survive all this, and there's almost a sense of it's made us become very protective of ourselves and our organizational safety. And what we actually need is to have that vulnerability to say we don't compete, none of us compete in any way, shape or form, and we're not seeming to have that embedded into the language that we even use. We say it as a thing. Yeah, we should work better. But you look around and you say, where is it happening? Show us the innovation. Show us the first fruits, the initial seeds where this is happening. Isn't always the same. But I suppose that the thought that's coming together from this is when you've been talking about some of the repeated massive changes that are going off, how much are they seen as? Now, let me just throw something else in as well. If what you're trying to articulate is a vision for your area, great homes, communities in the the Scottish Borders and that kind of region, that's what you're about. I mean, we're in Barnsley, South Yorkshire. We care deeply about everyone, but it's kind of we're here for Barnsley. It's not that we're not interested in you, but you know what I mean. It's how do you get your people to retain the integrity of vision, value, purpose, drive, when external pressures that are being brought up as kind of national standards have to be done, but they're impersonal. They mean nothing to your area except that they become statutory in law. But how do they? We're trying to do a bit of work here in how do you take all this absolutely massive stuff and actually use it as a tool rather than as an obligation? And it's an attitudinal thing.
Yeah.
So then you can actually bring that in a way that you can kind of leverage it within the organization. So we've got to do all this stuff. Let's make it good. Let's go above and beyond. Let's treat that as the absolute base minimum and then use that as a framework for how we can talk about excellence, innovation, creativity, sustainability, and whatever else in a language that then makes sense to other people. I know I've kind of said an awful lot there. That's just the way my brain works. But I kind of, the nub of it all for me is if it's all about your people, however many people are in the team, doing excellent stuff, how or what might you be seeing or contemplating about protecting and energizing them so that they can survive everything that's happened and then actually go on and do some absolutely brilliant stuff that ideally you can then showcase, not as a, well, hey, look at us, but as almost as a, look, we're onto something. Come on, let's feed into this and we can build the whole sector. Thank you.
Oh, that. I think like I worked in my hometown for the first 10 years of my career and felt that very deeply. Couldn't ever imagine myself working anywhere else bar that place, because how could I possibly have anything that meant as much to me about doing good things for the people who lived next door to me, my family, my friends, whoever else, than doing it there. And I went to work for the Scottish Government, and I came to Berwickshire Housing after that, and I thought, do you know what? All of this is just people. And I think for us, this is where the psychological safety thing comes back in. So rewarding vulnerability, actually caring, giving people an opportunity to care about something too. And when they hear, for example, some of those big, meaty, legislative, national headaches, sometimes, let's face it, actually, it's okay to be angry about that. It's okay to think that that's unfair. It's okay to think somebody's going to miss out. Right, but what are we going to do about it? So we don't tend to talk about innovation or creativity or any of those things, because I think the one thing I did learn about coming into BHA is there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in the sector who want to come in, do a really good job and just go home and have no desire to be the chief executive of anywhere, just want to come in and do a brilliant job. So let's capitalise on that. You know that place better than anybody. You know the people there better than anybody. You know what it needs better than anybody. And I think even things like, devolving some of the responsibility for the way that money's spent in some of the areas, the way that people can help embed their thoughts and what they're seeing into decision making, and the way that, large investments made in the organisation. But I think for us, ultimately, this is about psychological safety and people being able to openly show, some vulnerability, that they care about what happens to the place. And I think the other thing, I would imagine it'll be the same for yourself, Jamie, this is home for everybody who works there too. So the pride in making sure something's good for a community. One of my colleagues came in the other day and said, council are coming to... they want to put money into the play park, but they're not doing this, and they're not doing that, they're not doing that, they're not doing the other. Right, well, yeah. Right, what are we going to do about it? I don't know. Well, you do know. What can we do about it? What is within our control? Well, we could do this, and we could have a think about that, and we could make sure we maximise the number of people that are involved in the consultation. Absolutely, right. What do you need from me to help you make it happen? I think I could do that. Right, rock on. Come back and see me if there's a problem. So I think, and it's, I suppose, as a leader, showing you care too. And
that's so often challenges that accountability piece, and knowing, not just caring, but knowing that you're accountable and going, if there's something goes wrong, I'll put my hand up and fix it. I'm going to go Harriet, because Harriet is going to share that she's at the beginning of some of their journey, and then I'm going to bring in Kate, because I know she's made a point about for-profit companies as well, which could be interesting. But Harriet, I'll bring you in.
Hello, so I'm Harriet Brown. I'm Head of Localities for Midland Heart. So we're a bit of a different kettle of fish to Evie. So we've got about 35,000 homes over 55 local authority areas. So we're not that kind of local housing association. Most of our stock, although quite a lot of that is Birmingham based. And we've started localities. I suppose we're calling it a pilot, but it's part of our corporate plan. And we're starting within one ward in Birmingham. It's one of those areas where it's got our oldest stock. It's got the most kind of, when we're looking at the kind of reporting factors, it's got high levels of damp and mould reporting. We've got high levels of disrepair claims, quite a lot of complaints. We've got some positive stuff like low tenancy turnover and people wanting to remain within that area. But we've kind of looked at where a lot of our, I suppose, demand comes from and what we can do to be more preventative in that area so that we're not being reactive to all those issues coming in. So at the moment, we're looking at a baseline survey to see actually what our tenants within that community want, and working with stakeholders to see what benefit we can add. So the volunteering, community and faith sector are doing loads within the ward that we're looking at. And actually the small things within there around tapping into what funding do they need to be able to do the things that they want to do in the community. Historically, we've said no to funding some things which are relatively cheap. 250 quid would solve quite a lot of the issues that I don't know. They want to, what's one example? They want some planters to stop fly tipping and illegal parking, little things like that we're able to fund and support that they've really struggled to get through. And then we're also looking at, we've got quite a lot of large commercial contracts that have got social value elements to that, and how we can utilise that to support events within the community, employment opportunities. So there's apprenticeships from kind of more practical things up to stuff with our solicitors. There's lots of training opportunities within there. There's lots of stuff that would probably fall into resident responsibility, like clearing of gutters and things like that would help with kind of the damp and mould in some of those properties. So we're looking at how we kind of tap into those to support what the community want within those areas. Some of it's around the green spaces, and we're just waiting for that feedback really to see what people want and how we can mobilise some of that.
That's fantastic, and it's really interesting to hear about. I think so often a lot of the challenges that come through are particularly aimed at large providers is, well, how are you dealing with, how are you going to be more community led? How are you going to be community focused again? How are you going to be more local focused? So the fact that you're trying to put something in place, it's going to be a long challenge, and it's going to be as well something that you'll no doubt get plenty of pushback on, because someone else will go, well, what about this? What about that? But it's starting the journey is the challenge, isn't it?
And it's to be shaped. I don't think we've gone into it thinking, yes, we're going to do this. We've gone into it with the teams that work in the area. You've been working in the area for years, a bit like Evie's just said. What do you think we need to do, and what can we do? What ideas have you got to begin with? And that's kind of the first stage in engaging with tenants. What do they want? What can we do? And if there's stuff we can't do, why can't we do it? And could we do it in the future? So it's a bit of an open book at the moment.
But I think you've hit the nail on the head with that as well, though, because when we do have to say no, and we have to say no sometimes, but like, tell me why, help me understand, and don't leave me hanging so that I phone you again in 12 months' time to say, oh, hiya, remember that? Can we get that? And I think what you've done there, because you're right about some of those small investments that make the massive impact, actually putting a planter in to stop the housing officer getting, 10 queries of a couple of months about folk leaving cars parked badly that, most organisations aren't going to be able to do anything about anyway. Some of these preventative measures that you can whack a wee logo on as well, that, that was a Midland Heart investment here to, benefit the community, but also to prevent that becoming a continual issue is just class.
It's just little things, isn't it? And I suppose that's where we're starting. And if that I went to a community drop-in, and it was one of the first things that someone said to me, you said no to this. And I was like, did we? Why did we? I can't understand why we did say no. Leave it with me and we'll have a look. But some of it's revisiting, like you said, and saying, yeah, we did say no. I'm not quite sure why we did, but this is what we can do now. So we do have some kind of bridges to build there, but it's an opportunity when you're having those conversations to do things that you can.
Thank you so much. Kate, I'm going to come to you because I know you had a point you want to raise about for-profit companies coming to the table in those partnerships as well.
Absolutely. So I'm a bit of an oddity. So I've come from social housing. I now work for a care provider as a head of housing, which is a for-profit company where trauma-informed, specialist supported housing, and I manage all of supported living. So I am, if you like, the poacher turned gamekeeper. So I deal with all of our RPs, and we talk, and all of our developers talking about how we can make things better for our tenants, because ultimately it's our tenants that are the core of our business. That's what we want them to do. We want them to be in long-term tenure, we want them to be settled. We can provide a care package around it, and as their needs change, we all do DFGs and stuff like that. And one of the things that we do, as Kerry has just said, is we do a lot around social value. So we've done a big piece of work going back to our contractors and saying, we give you an X hundred of thousands of pounds of, work. So what do we get back in social value? And some of those things can be really sort of like they come and paint our communal areas for us because the housing association can't do it for another 3 years, or they will come and do some landscaping for us, or, whatever it might be. So that's one of the things that we do. And like has been said, we put up a little plaque saying, thanks very much, this
has been donated by Billy Blogs as part of our social value scheme. But also it's about building those communities. And what I've always found in housing is everybody goes, it's a housing issue. And how many meetings have we all sat in with social care? They don't call you by the name. They go, housing. Actually, we're Midland Heart, we're Trinity, we're Sanctuary, we're, Peabody, whoever we are, that's who we are. We're not just housing. And again, it's about keeping all those people to account. And that has the effect on your teams, that actually when you're saying to them, yeah, I'll come and sit in your meeting, I tell you what, I'm going to say to them, so what are you doing about it? And the rate of burnout in housing is humongous. And sometimes just sitting in those meetings and kind of going, I'm here to have you back, and that's what I'll do, because that's part of our trauma-informed approach, and that's part of our psychologically informed approach, that actually, I'm not too big to do that. My chief executive has actually sat in an interview with a registered manager because he was so invested in the scheme, and I think that's really important as well. So we're building communities from the ground up, but we're also helping our teams from the top down, and nobody is too big.
It's wonderful to hear, and it's like I say, I think it's that piece, isn't it, around how do we? It doesn't matter what size business you are. I know there was a roundtable we ran a few weeks ago on whether or not housing needs to think of itself basically as the discussion was whether housing had a willingness to change, which was very broad anyway, and you can probably imagine was quite fiery. But what really came out of that was that housing needs to have a mindset of a proper customer service based business. Now, the challenge was that there was a pushback from a few tenants saying we're not customers because the message didn't really get across. So we're not saying you're customers, but if the mindset was we could lose you, what would we do to make sure that actually you got the service you deserved and everything else that went with it? It was a really interesting conversation. And there's absolutely, as Kate's mentioned, there's a huge place for for-profit providers. There's a huge place for tech providers. There's a huge place for local authorities and NHS and housing providers to literally collaborate. But we're just not always brilliant at it. And as you say, sometimes you're just a token person in the room that's pointed at saying, well, that's your fault, your issue, that's your... Yeah. It comes back to that piece around accountability. And Evie, just as we're kind of going into final thoughts, I imagine that's the bit that, by the sounds of it, is being worked on all the time because it's going to improve, is that piece of partnership working. Because if we're truly going to get to the bottom of making safe, quality, affordable homes for people, which is really all we should be doing, everything else we sometimes add on is a nice to have. But in terms of the true customer engagement and the fairs and everything else that we run, we forget that sometimes actually, well, what we're really meant to be is just a landlord that delivers somewhere safe, quality, and affordable to live. And everything else that's alongside of it can because we've got it wrong for so many years that now we have to get that stuff right in order to get to know what's really going on and build trust again. And I guess for yourself, that seems to be the narrative that constantly comes through, is that partnership work. We just have to get better at it.
I think there's 2 words and 2 words only. Guess what they are? Brilliant basics. So if we can't do that, we can't do anything else. And I think there's nothing to stop anybody talking to the people who are working round about them, doing the things that they want to do, getting on the back of it, funding it in alternative fashions without having to necessarily take on the full responsibility for it. I think Jamie's points really sat with me, and probably will for the rest of the week, just about all of these organisations are running about trying to do all these things themselves. Actually, how much easier could we make it actually if we just did a wee bit more together? But yeah, brilliant basics.
Well, there it is. But a massive good luck to you for the CIH Vice Presidency nominations. I know that, like I say, closes tomorrow, so we'll find out next week. Yeah. A massive thank you to Alertical for sponsoring today's session and putting on today. Emma, was there any final comments you'd like to make from Alertical's side of things? Because I know obviously you've helped put together today's session.
Yeah, just say thank you very much, Evie. That was really interesting for us, and also to hear Jamie and Kate share their experiences and
Harriet
as well. Yeah. I think for us, the question, the kind of thing that Kate raised was around bringing for-profit organisations into the mix, and obviously we are for profit, but our philosophy is profit with purpose, and I think that really is starting to resonate with housing associations and social housing, because actually, yes, technology can be of benefit, but you've got to have that human contact. Technology cannot replace the people. And so, that the people are the ones doing the amazing jobs. What technology needs to do is to help people make those jobs and lives easier, quite simply.
Certainly is. And a huge thank you to you for, like I say, not just sponsoring this session, but the roundtable more generally through the course of the year. And there's a reason that I feel we've partnered is because we're so engaged in proper discussion. Let's hear all sides of the argument. Let's properly hear every side of the coin, because otherwise you just hear what you need, what we've always heard, and we don't always get the chance to make those changes. I know Evie's just put in the chat there, just as we finish off next, that there is if you have anyone under 35 in your business, there's a newly launched survey from CIH Futures, which is the first of its kind to understand the challenges young professionals face. It is very much focused at under 35. You'll have seen Alistair McIntosh made a slide joke this morning about it on LinkedIn, which is quite funny. But Megan Rank, who's one of the people who are running that, is coming on to do the roundtable next week, next Tuesday. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, then please just let me know, reach out to me, or join us next week for the roundtable. But for now, Evie, Emma, and everyone who had input today, a huge, huge thank you. And I'll see you all at a future event. Cheers and take care.
Thanks, Matt. Take care.